Scene transitions, for me, you hit a wall without scene transitions. They don't have to be super in your face. If they are, you're talking about Star Wars wipes, and that's fine if you dig that sort of thing, but that's not gonna work in most movies. You plan out your transitions in pre-pro, and I do have Adobe and the Frog to show you guys. We're gonna watch the whole thing because it has a bunch of scene transitions in it that we thought up ahead of time. The main idea behind scene transitions is moving you from one to the other. And I'm not talking about the scene that we were discussing the other day where you're moving from a living room to a kitchen and it's the whole same scene. I'm talking about we're at the hospital and now we cut to the house. You have to have some kind of transition.
Ah, love.
Oh.
Can you think of a time when your passion for someone was equally abundant as the distance that separated you?
You're talking.
Were you ever driven to such madness by your love that you couldn't go on without instituting revolutionary change?
Are you wanting me to answer these?
Such was the case with two very special people. Premiere Pro was a man of strengths and pragmatism.
Wait, Premiere Pro? Like the software?
No.
So you're not talking about Adobe's editing software?
I am not talking about software, boy. I am talking about love.
Okay.
As I was saying, he was madly in love with a girl named After Effects.
Now you're definitely talking about software.
I am talking about love.
Yeah, okay.
He was madly in love with a girl named After Effects. After Effects was a woman who radiated beauty and magic. Premiere loved her, and she loved him. When they were together, it was magical. But sooner or later, they had to return to their separate lives, which, as we all know, is no good for love. When missing their integration...
Ew. Wait, that's a software feature.
Premiere would send her letters filled with love, and After Effects would send him letters in return. And that is when Premiere realized it was time to take this to the next level.
Is that it?
They decided to take their relationship to a whole new level of integration.
I'm concerned that means what I think it means.
Under one roof now, sharing their love and life's text, which Premiere can now easily edit. Premiere now also possesses the ability to create masks with several points and feathering. He can now also track the mask to an object to affect only that area. For example, when blurring a face.
The metaphor is pretty much entirely broken down at this point.
Now, integration is easier than ever, and a kiss is just a step away. And as we all know, a kiss can cure even the most ancient of curses. What the fuck?
So you'll also notice that we are dancing all over the rule of thirds in that guy. So I'm pushing everything off, before we talk about transitions, I'm pushing everything off those points of interest to kind of create an off feeling, not in a super odd way, but in sort of a fantasy kind of way. Even in the shot of Josh, there's far too much headroom. I'm matching the headroom of the frog, but I'm also trying to give him a little kid innocent vibe. So I'm making him a little smaller in frame, trying to make him a little cuter, because that little moment, he's such a cutie. That little moment is kind of real world, but we're trying to get sort of a Pixar-ish vibe out of this thing mixed with Film Riot irreverence. So we're dancing all over those sort of ideas, slamming things center, taking that point of interest and moving just a touch, and those were all conscious decisions to try to get the sort of tone that we wanted. But the scene transitions throughout are pretty simple. In this guy, there's one or two that were really thought out, but a lot of them even seems like we're just cutting. But if you notice, you'll hear Josh talk first, then we come back to real world. Or the music has a switch up immediately to have us up. Even if it's so much as just a keynote that, of a piano that happens from one switch to another, it's gonna make it feel less odd and make everything feel a lot more fluid. You can also match cut on a move. Like we did in here, actually. We pan over, then we're coming out, and that moves us from one scene to another. We're actually moving time frames, so we condense all that real quickly just through the scene transition. If we were to just cut, it wouldn't have worked quite as well. Using objects and frame wipes We kind of did that idea with the wall, but moving behind something, then you mask around that to reveal behind it. But you're going to have to move the slider the exact same in both shots. Does that make sense, or did I go over that one too quickly? Make sense? Great. Sound is what I use the most. And that's just riddled with just sound transitions, but I have a better example. This will cut from this scene to a second, and then a third, all just using music, which this one has sound, so hopefully that's on. All just using music to push us through time. So we're just using music to transition our scene. So we're taking our character to probably 5 minutes later just by using music. That's it. It's nothing about the cutting, but I knew I was going to do that ahead of time, so I knew I could just cut from one to the other. So you got to plan those transitions before time, even if you're just doing it with music or some kind of sound effect, hearing a character talk, then jumping to it. It's going to make everything run a lot smoothly. It'll fix your edit for you, and we'll get into some of that later about sound and when you're editing as well. So always be thinking about scene transitions. Homework, watch Stay. If you haven't seen Stay, it's a Mark Forster film. It's, I think, an excellent film, very psychologically driven, and it has just insane scene transitions. A lot of them are very in your face, but just watching them and thinking how he thought. Some of it, you're like, what just happened? Have you seen it? You just, where am I? And then you transition to another scene. You don't even know when it happened. It's pretty fantastic. So definitely check that one out. But questions?
So there's been quite a few questions about directing in general. Question is, what are 3 things for getting cast and crew on board with you as a director and trust you, particularly if they have never worked with you before?
That's like what we were talking about on the first day. Have something to show for yourself. If you don't have anything yet and you're trying to make your first thing, if you have an iPhone, go shoot something. Look at the work of Philip Bloom. He's out there with a camera by himself telling stories about life, but he's constructing these stories out of them using music, using how he works the camera. If you could do something like that and show them that you can really drive a story and tone and get them excited in something and wanting to be a part of it, you're going to get them on board a lot more. Or the other idea that I gave was the sizzle reels that directors will do to pitch to a studio. You take a bunch of other films that feel exactly like the one you're trying to make, and you create a trailer out of it using scores from other soundtracks and show that to them, get them excited. The point is you have to have something that you can show them that you did to get them on board and excited with what you're trying to do. If you have nothing to show for yourself, it's going to be really hard to convince people to jump on board unless they just love you and want to help.
All right, Cayenne wanted to know, what did you use to do the frog? Was that Blender? Cayenne's from New Orleans.
Stark. Dear Stark. I would say that was kind of like bubblegum and popsicle sticks to some extent, wouldn't you say? It was kind of last minute.
We bought the model. It was pre-rigged.
TurboSquid.com.
From TurboSquid, which is like, if you need models, they have thousands. No, it was actually a 3D Studio Max file. We FBX'd it to Maya, because our animator animates in Maya, exported everything out, the entire animation as an OBJ sequence, and it wasn't rendered. That was all done in After Effects with Element. We imported it and just rendered out the entire thing. And like to fake the reflection, we just copied the model, and that's all it is. So it's actually 2 models, and then we just turned down the transparency.
Which the frog is a great example of what we were talking about making the compromises when you have a deadline and a budget. You have to make compromises. The frog was one of the biggest compromises we made. Stark figured out a way to kind of get it to work in the time frame that we had, because doing it the correct way would have been how long? Like triple our timeline. So we had to find a way to bring it down. So the frog didn't quite hit the level we wanted, but it worked for the piece. It was very cartoony, which totally worked for the tone. So that saved us a lot.
I thought it was awesome. I feel like he was just speaking French then, because I did not understand a word of that. I'm not an FX person. So anyway, that was cool. Thanks for answering that, Stark. So Tommy C wanted to know, where do you get your music?
So that was from a composer that I work with. There's so many composers out there now because of the software is making it a lot easier to get into it and sort of learn. Same thing with what we do. So there's a lot of people on there. If you just go on like SoundCloud or start Googling it, you'll find people that are doing stuff for video games on lower ends that are wanting to get into this sort of thing. The composer I use most started in video games, still doing video games, doing a AAA video game right now. But he really wanted to get into film, so he did my first for free just because he really wanted to. He was just doing video games, so that's a great place to look. And then there's just royalty-free that you can do online. MusicBed is a really great place to get music. They curate music in a really interesting way that makes it simple. So even royalty-free music has come down in price a lot. Your Sexy song that I used was like $2, and I can use it however I want. So if you just Google royalty-free music, you'll find tons of places, and then just cross-reference the prices.
All right, a question. I noticed you were side coaching your actors while the camera was rolling. Are the microphones so directional as to actually allow you to do that on set?
No, that's where 30 seconds of sound comes in that we were talking about. So we would have, if we were shooting for real, we would have had everybody be quiet for about 30 seconds to a minute, and then we would have had that silence to replace my voice with the silence, because it's not true silence like we talked about. If we quiet down, we'll hear the air conditioner, any kind of other noise that's in this room or outside, and then we could easily just replace my talking with it. I'm always talking to my actors when I direct. I mean, if you watch any behind the scenes, you see the director talking to the actors the entire way, cueing them of when to go. Oftentimes, I'll tell them what the action is, and then I'll just cue you, because I want them to be off guard a little bit.
All right, Jake Haffer wanted to know, how do you shoot for an edit when making a compilation movie or an after movie? How do you throw the footage together without it becoming rhythmless?
Is that like Tarantino style is he talking about? I don't shoot that way, so I feel a little unqualified to answer that. If I were to do that, I would probably write it out of sequence and then think of it in sequence and then shoot it that way more than likely.
All right, great. How do you keep a uniform look if you're using two different cameras with different sensors, like the C100 and
It's
the
not that hard to
XA10?
balance. I've used C100 and 5D same time and put them together. We shot something on a C500 and the 5D and stitched it together, and it totally worked. It's like we were talking about the first day. Know the limitations and work around that. If you're pumping a lot of light into it, you're going to be able to balance a lot of things. We shot with the Red Epic and the 5D. The Red Epic was in 4K in the 5D, and we were able to blend it. It's a matter of just testing, seeing where the limits are, where the ceilings are for those devices, and how to bring them together.
All right, are there any cliche shots you would recommend to avoid?
It's a really good question, actually. What do you guys think? Cliche shots.
Starting your film with someone waking up.
Starting your film with someone waking up. That's actually a really good one. You know what? The Michael Bay stand-up wraparound. That would be the one that I wish would go away forever. Stark.
Stupid Matrix bullet time.
Matrix
Let it
bullet
die.
time. Oh, that's used like Sherlock just used that in a really cool way, though.
No.
Yeah.
I know you mentioned this before on the show, the whole, I'm definitely not going in the car, nothing is gonna get me in the car, I'm never going,
worst.
in the next shot they're in the car. Yeah.
It's not funny. We see it coming. That is the worst. I agree. That would be mine. That's my number one. Then followed by the waking up shot.
Definitely the aerial shot of the water to reveal the city at the opening of a romantic sitcom, that type movie,
That's
right?
also a good one.
That drives me crazy.
William?
I especially don't like if I have to read a paragraph beforehand to get you caught up.
Right.
And I'm wondering if they're going to do that with the new Star Wars.
I'm going to say probably.
Yeah.
I was just going to say no Star Wars in general.
Shots fired.
Oh, come on, man. You know what? One thing's one of my most hated things, which then we can end, which I think is where you're going. One of my most hated things is when people start something, which we don't talk about, so we'll just talk about it here. When we start something and we watch the most mundane crap for no reason. Person wakes up, person brushes their teeth, person washes their face, person eats breakfast, person gets in their car, person drives the car to their place, they get out of their freaking car, they go into the place, and I'm like, what the hell are we even doing? And if you're doing it for a reason, like Revolutionary Road showed how mundane this guy's life was, and it was for a reason, it was to set something up. But most people are not doing it for a reason. I have to wait a minute to get into their 3-minute short film because dude's brushing his teeth. Everyone, please stop doing that forever.